We want to start this evening with Nancy Cordes and the news that the second inauguration of Donald Trump will be held inside the Capitol. Nancy, great to see you. This was not an unexpected announcement today, but it does shake a lot of things up.
It really does, Major, because as you can imagine, there are folks on Capitol Hill who have been planning for up to a year to pull off this inauguration. It involves the building of an entirely new platform on the west front of the Capitol, all of the security, all the preps for the media, all the preps for tens of thousands of people to gather on the National Mall to witness the swearing in at noon on Monday. And suddenly this morning we learned that President-elect Trump was going to be moving his inauguration into the Capitol, just as Ronald Reagan did, and for the same reason, because it is going to be bitterly cold on Monday, around 20 degrees, but with winds up to 30 miles per hour, which will make it feel even colder. And so from a safety perspective, it was obviously the best thing to do. There were some who wondered whether Trump would be willing to take that step, because obviously the most majestic images come from seeing any president be sworn in right there with the Capitol dome as a backdrop. But, you know, his new location for an inauguration isn't too shabby either. He will be inside the Capitol Rotunda, and plans are feverishly being put in place to move the ceremony indoors. Obviously, they can't fit as many people inside as they would have outside, and so some people will be able to witness it in person. Others are being encouraged to go somewhere warm and watch it there.
And one of the places they can go to be warm and to watch it is Capital One Arena, where we were told today the parades associated with some of the inaugural events will be conducted.
Right. I mean, as you can imagine, if the temperatures aren't safe for those who are going to be attending the inauguration and participating in it, then they're not all that great for people who have traveled from all over the country to perform in the inaugural parade or to watch the inaugural parade either. And so Trump posted earlier today that those who want to watch the ceremony on a screen and who want to see the parade in person should go to Capital One Arena in downtown D.C. He's going to be holding a rally at the same arena the day before. He said he'll have a message for those who are gathered there. So that is a space, you know, it holds tens of thousands of people. So it is a space that a lot of his supporters can go to, although there is obviously some disappointment that they won't be able to gather on the mall and watch the entire ceremony unfold in person.
Nancy, one other topic before I let you go, TikTok and what President-elect Trump said about it today and his overall orientation to this thing that is now going to be on his desk once he arrives on Monday.
Right. So there was a really fascinating sequence of events that unfolded today. First of all, the Supreme Court said that it is going to allow this ban that was passed by Congress that is supposed to be imposed on Sunday that would prevent TikTok from continuing to remain on U.S. platforms because it has not been sold to a U.S. buyer by its Chinese owner. The Supreme Court said we're not going to weigh in, as Trump had asked them to do. And then the Biden administration said, guess what? We're not really going to take action either. With 1 day left in the Biden administration, so many officials have already sort of packed up and said their goodbyes. The Biden administration isn't going to do anything to try to make TikTok go dark either. And so it really is going to be left up to the Trump administration exactly how hard and how soon to enforce this ban. Donald Trump has made it clear he's not so sure he wants to enforce the ban. He likes the way TikTok looked during the campaign, lots of videos praising him. And so he said that Congress has left it up to him. And he even said that he talked to the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, about it when they spoke this morning, Major.
Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. In West Palm Beach, Florida, which I can assure everyone is much warmer than we are here in Washington, D.C. Nancy, thanks so much. Kadia Goba and Fin Gómez are here. Kadia, you might remember, political reporter for Semafor, and Fin Gómez, of course you know, the political director for CBS News. Kadia, I want to start with you. So there are going to be a lot of things next week that come from the new second Trump administration. He knew that this TikTok thing was going to be right there. How he tries to solve this sets up as either something that disappoints 170 million platform users, or in kind of quintessential Trumpian fashion, is a deal that saves things at the last second.
Yeah, everyone's anticipating or looking to what the incoming president will do, but it's unclear that he has any authority over this. The courts have spoken.
Right.
And more importantly, one of the measures is that, people like Apple and the service providers will be fined if they have the app on their platform. So it's very unclear. I'm sure they don't want to pay those fines, and I'm not sure they're going to take that loss for the incoming president. It's not clear why he could do anything to prevent this.
Unless he figures out a way to strike a deal where it is an American owner who purchases it from ByteDance and brings not only the servers, which are already, as TikTok will tell everyone, in Texas.
Yeah.
They're already here, but the controlling ownership, U.S.-based as well. Finn?
Yeah, and obviously this is also it's also tweaks the Chinese government, frankly. If he does move that, if that does happen, shifts it, and he also has said that he has shifted himself on his position on TikTok, right? I mean, in part because
complete reversal.
Yeah, in part because of the bro vote, right? We all recall that young male voter who came out in support for Donald Trump. What we saw in November's election. So if he does come out and does that, he becomes the TikTok savior. Yeah.
So. We're going to have an inauguration indoors. Yeah. Much smaller crowd, much quieter. And yet, Finn, I think you know this. We all know this. There's going to be a table right next to wherever he gives his remarks after he's sworn in, and he's going to start the executive order process right then and there.
With a flurry. And they have said so.
Not even going to wait to get back to the White House.
Not even. It's going to happen right there in that rotunda. And I think that, all the sources, the Trump sources that we've been speaking to, the incoming administration sources that we've been speaking to, have all said that will be a very impactful day. We're going to see a historic amount of executive actions that day, including on immigration.
Yeah, especially on immigration. Democrats are already anticipating multiple executive orders, one specifically that will talk or deputize local government or local law enforcement to act as, ICE patrol people. So that'll be interesting. I think, like I said, Democrats are already preparing for some of this now.
And, Kadia, not just Democrats on Capitol Hill, but Democratic state attorneys general are girding for this. California, lots of other states where Democrats hold positions of attorney general, they're on the lookout for these executive actions and orders to see if there's anything that they can do legally to either slow or blunt some of these actions coming from Trump 2.0.
Also, governors in those sanctuary cities are also, they've been having meetings. I've been talking to them also, and it's unclear where there's going to be about. Obviously, this is going to go to the courts eventually, but we do anticipate, or many of them anticipate, there to be some action on the ground at the beginning.
Finn, have you heard anything about whether or not any of these executive orders or actions will invoke emergency declarations or powers that flow from that, either economic, immigration, national security, or otherwise?
I have heard something along those lines.
There's some hardliners who talk that way. Whether they actually come to fruition, I guess, is the big question.
Yeah, that is what we're waiting for. That is like the equation that needs to be answered, that needs to be solved. But we have heard that. I was at the RNC winter meetings earlier today, and there was some talk of that with some of the sources that I was speaking to there. But again, we have to wait. In a couple of days, we will see what he will do. I have to just go back to that rotunda just for a second. I was just there a little while ago, Major, and to me, I mean, going from, and that was Trump's first inauguration outside. It wasn't as cold as it's supposed to be on Monday, but to go from that space to like such a smaller space, it's really unique. It's historic, and just being there, you can feel that. And of course, we talked about, there's some echoes of Reagan from 1985, of course, the last time he was there. And also, I mean, with the potential release of, the expected release of the hostages happening, that echoes of Reagan 1980 as well. There's a lot of kind of like these historical kind of connections back to that time.
And to just do a little AccuWeather forecasting here, 8 degrees, supposed to be the ambient temperature at noon Monday here in Washington, D.C. It was supposed to be 7 on the day of Reagan's second inauguration in 1985. So almost identical wind patterns and temperatures, bringing them both inside. 25 degrees, 30 degrees, chilly, but we can handle that. I've covered those inaugurations. You've covered those inaugurations. Kadia, I'm sure you have. But this would have been a highly dangerous situation for first responders, law enforcement, Secret Service. and Trump attendees. They would have been jeopardized if this thing had been held outside, even though we all know that President-elect Trump would have preferred the grandeur of it all. This is the wisest, safest decision.
You know, one senior Trump advisor told me that, yeah, he referenced the Supreme Court justices who were going to be out there as well. Like, you know, it has the dangerous feel. Of course, you and I have also been in Iowa when it was much colder than that in Major Garrett.
But not for 8 hours.
Not for 8
hours straight. That's
right,
the whole
exactly.
deal. That's
Plus
the deal.
wind, yeah.
That's the whole deal. And Kadia, real quickly, we talked about Kristi Noem's confirmation hearing today. There is this on-running dialogue behind the scenes about how influential she'll be on core immigration policy, or is that going to be really directed by Tom Homan, the border czar, and Stephen Miller, who's the deputy chief of staff right next to the president inside the White House?
Great question. I think Miller is going to have a big impact on the legislation that is coming out of Congress. But Homan is going to be that person on the ground directing all of this. He has the he has the law enforcement background, and this is why he was chosen. He is going to facilitate all of the things happening on the ground. And I think Miller will be more behind the scenes.
And in the conversations I've heard, it describes Kristi Noem, if confirmed, which she is very much likely to be, in charge of the other DHS obligations, TSA, FEMA, other things that are all very important, cybersecurity, super important, but just not be the lead voice or figure on immigration.
You're exactly right.
Is that your impression as well, Fin?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Kadia Goba, Fin Gómez. And Fin, we're so glad your microphone is now back belongs where it should be. Thanks so much. And a quick reminder, programming note, this is good, important. CBS News 24/7 coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump begins Monday at 6 a.m. And please join Lindsay Reiser and me at 6 p.m. Eastern from the Capitol for a recap of the day's biggest moments and celebratory events.